Over the past week in sports, there's been multiple examples of players walking out or quitting on their team in the middle of a game. Obviously, the one that went viral was Antonio Brown walking out on the Bucks, taking off his jersey, basically stripping, throwing it into the crowd, and leaving. After the game, the Bucks head coach said that Antonio Brown was no longer a part of the team, and then there was also an example in the NBA. The Denver Nuggets were blowing out the Houston Rockets at halftime. The Rockets head coach called out a couple of players on the team, including Christian Wood and Kevin Porter Jr., and Kevin Porter Jr. reportedly threw an object and then left the arena at halftime, while Christian Wood just refused to sub into the game after halftime. So with both of those things happening over the past week in sports, it got me thinking, is there any examples of something like this that happened in the National Hockey League? And obviously one came to my mind right away, which isn't really the same thing. It's Patrick Roy's last game as a Montreal Canadien, where he was getting embarrassed by the Detroit Red Wings, and the Montreal Canadiens head coach just left him in, didn't pull him, and then after it became 9-1, he finally decided to take Patrick Roy out of the net, and when Patrick Roy went back to the bench, he went over to the Montreal Canadiens owner, I believe it was, who was sitting right behind the bench, and basically whispered to him that he would never play another game for the Montreal Canadiens, and he never did. They traded him to the Avalanche. Now, like I said, that's not really the same thing because he didn't technically quit on the team in the middle of a game because he stuck it out the whole way until he got pulled, but after he got pulled, he just said he'd never play another game for the team. Now, after doing a little bit more searching around, looking for examples of something similar to what happened in the NFL and the NBA with an NHL player, I did come across a story that I thought would be really interesting to share with you guys. It's an article from the Toronto Sun. It was written by Dave Feschuk, hopefully I said that name properly, in September of 2018, and this is the first time I ever came across this article last night, and immediately when I read it, I thought I have to make a video on this. I have to share it with you guys because while I'm sure maybe a couple of you have already read this or seen this, I'm sure the majority of you haven't. So let's go over this article. It's pretty hilarious. It's titled, "Meet the NHL Goalie Who Turned Game Day Retirement into an Art Form." When Buffalo Bills cornerback Vontae Davis made headlines with his now infamous halftime retirement from the NFL last Sunday, which isn't actually last Sunday, again, this was written in 2018, there were those who called it unprecedented, and in some ways it was, but for longtime observers, Davis's unconventional bow out brought back faint memories of another game day bow out. The setting was Buffalo's since departed Memorial Auditorium, home of the NHL's Sabres circa 1977. The anti-hero of the moment was Al Smith, the Mimico-raised goaltender who had just finished warming up for a game he'd been told he would start. It was supposed to have been a rare opportunity for Smith, who'd come up in the Toronto pipeline and played a handful of games for the Maple Leafs at the tail end of their original six heyday. Smith at the time was 32, and though he'd established himself as a reliable pro in previous stops in Pittsburgh, Detroit, and New England of the World Hockey Association, he'd hit a roadblock in Buffalo. More than 50 games into his second season, he'd been granted 2 starts, but with Sabres number 1, Jerry Desjardins, out with an eye injury, Smith had been told by coach Floyd Smith, no relation to Al Smith, that he'd be the guy. Alas, the team's plans changed. Just before the game, Al Smith was informed that general manager Punch Imlach, hopefully I said that properly, I have no idea if I did, was insisting that Sabres cede the net to rookie Don Edwards, who'd been brought up from the Sabres farm team. His chance suddenly vanished. Smith soon did likewise. After the playing of the Star-Spangled Banner, Smith instructed Buffalo trainer Frank Christie to open the gate to the players' bench. Skating onto the ice as the opening faceoff loomed, Smith took part in a farewell twirl, waving theatrically towards Sabres owner Semyor Knox, who was sitting behind the bench, and with that, the goalie headed to the dressing room, removed his gear, and announced his retirement. Frank Orr, the Star hockey writer, called it an exit with flair. Sitting in the stands that night, Smith's then-wife Karen said she was as surprised as anyone in the arena. "I had no idea," said Karen, speaking this past week over the line from her Toronto home. "He's a very emotional guy, most goalies are, so he quit on the spot, and of course it was a big to-do because that doesn't happen." So I'm gonna leave it there. There is a little bit more to the article, so I will leave a link to it down below in the description if you want to read it in its entirety for yourself, but I just thought that was a hilarious story that I wanted to share with you guys because I'm sure there was at least some of you out there who saw the viral video of Antonio Brown, maybe heard about the news of Kevin Porter Jr. leaving the arena, and were like me and wondered if anything had ever happened like that in the NHL, and I guess, yeah, it kinda did. Now, technically, Al Smith didn't quit in the middle of a game because he wasn't set to start in that game, and it was before puck drop, but, like, it was right before puck drop, right after the national anthem, and I find it hilarious that he kinda skated around, sarcastically waved at the Sabres owner. I really tried my hardest to find a video of this so I could include it in the video, but I just couldn't. I guess there was no one in the stands with a video camera on their cell phone going back in 1977. But that is pretty much going to do it for this video. I know it was basically just me reading an article, but I really wanted to share it with you guys. I figured a lot of you would get enjoyment out of it like I did. If you enjoyed this quick little video and you learned something new, or you just found it interesting, be sure to leave the video a like. I'd really appreciate that. And if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content just like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll talk to you all soon.